secretly paid off my girlfriend's debt to propose and celebrate her birthday, but now she's furious and I might lose her forever. Recently I'm having a big fallout with my girlfriend of 4 years and I don't understand why she's angry. I have this amazing girlfriend we'll call Amy. She's the best girl you'll ever meet. She's kind, understanding, and makes the best omelet in the world. She's very poor though, has always been. She was raised by a single mother and they struggled all her childhood. I come from the opposite type of style. I know I'm very privileged, but me and her have been friends for years after a chance meeting. She has always been a great girlfriend and we don't argue often, but when we do it's about money, not as you would think. She just doesn't like when I spend money on her and I can't understand it. I would gift her nice jewelry and she always seemed to dislike it. Me being love-struck upgraded and I brought her a new car. We got in a big argument that time and she told me she didn't want me to waste money on her. She'd rather me spend that type of money on something important, but she is important and I want to spoil her. I learned that she appreciated things more if they were directly given to her. If I brought myself a necklace and didn't like it, she would accept it, so I started buying her things pretending they were for me and I didn't want them. She would accept and things were going good. I want to propose soon, but she wants to pay off her debts first so we have a clean slate to start on. I've known this since the beginning. She works hard to pay them. She doesn't pay rent or any utilities in my house. I don't let her even if she tries. Last week with the help of her mother I paid off her student loans. I thought it would be a nice gift to her considering it was her birthday, but once everyone left she blew up on me like never before. I've never seen her so angry. She told me I crossed a line, that she was working hard to pay it off and I ruined that and I was a jerk for involving her mom in my schemes. What she really said that stuck with me was, "You can't understand why I'm angry because you've never had to struggle and you've never felt the pride of finally doing something yourself." And even then I didn't understand. She ended up leaving and she's at her mom's house. I can't understand why I'm losing her. I pay the debt, but I don't want to lose her. I just want her to live in comfort and I want to marry her. Now that a few days have passed I'm getting anxious and I'm starting to feel like a real jerk for invading her privacy. Our whole house is decorated to her taste and it smells like her, but she's not here. Each time I realize that I feel more and more stupid. I've never felt like such a jerk before, even if I don't think I did anything wrong. So am I the asshole for paying off my girlfriend's debt without consulting her? At the same time, hyper-independence is a trauma response of always having to work hard for everything in your life and not trusting anyone to help you. And most importantly, it's from learning the hard way and deeply believing that nothing comes for free. She will feel like it's pity or charity, or she now owes you. That's why she might struggle with you doing nice things for her. The answer is apologize and tell her that you want to understand, and then truly listen and genuinely be curious about her reasoning. Then tell her that giving her things makes you feel happy and it's how you like to show you care for her. Ask her if there are things she can simply let you do for her. Stop pretending things are for you and do not lie. That will only break the trust she's slowly building. No A's here. Wishing you the best. Edit to add. Na and op, please read the notes below about therapy, together and individually, and striving to understand. Good luck. You and your GF have extremely different life experiences, and because she grew up without money and you apparently have lots of money, that's something she's self-conscious about. Probably, putting myself in her shoes as a person who grew up poor. You keep paying for things for her and it's easy for her to think you see her as some kind of charity case. Plus she doesn't want to put herself into a position where your loved ones and friends could possibly call her a gold digger. Not saying they would do that, but she's trying to avoid even the chance of it. She has told you, by the sounds of it more than once, that she does not want you spending lots of money on her. You did it anyway, so not only did you completely disregard her request, you stomped on a goal she was trying to meet through hard work and determination, paying off her debt. Yes, you did it for what you thought was for good reasons, but you did it for you, not her. You assume she wants fancy jewelry and a flash car, but guess what? When you grow up poor, that stuff can make you feel really uncomfortable and ill at ease. The fact you cannot see her perspective at all, despite being with her for 4 years, tells me you have done nothing to truly understand her life and her mentality towards money and wealth. And to rope her mom in to help you do it in secret, because you knew she'd never accept it, come on, let's be honest, makes it even worse. Now you have her distrusting her only parent because she went behind her back and colluded with you. She has made it clear that she doesn't want big expensive gifts time and again. You just made it obvious that a marriage with you will just be more of you ignoring what she wants in favor of what you want to give her. No means no, even when it's financial. If someone specifically told you not to help, then it's not helping when you step in to assist anyway. Her tiniest of smidges of being the issue in this situation is that she needs to accept that part of being in a relationship is to be able to depend on each other in many ways, including financially. People who had to make do with less because there was no help available often have issues with accepting help when it becomes available, even to their own detriment. However, you don't get to dictate when she decides she is comfortable with that. It's possible that all she wanted was to pay off her own loans herself and then she would move forward with you as a unit and not as individuals. You didn't want to wait for that and used your money to rush the process, and now she has no personal metric to decide you are entering the next phase of your lives on equal grounds. If it's not clear, she's upset that she specifically told you to stay out of it and you didn't. For someone that claims to love her, you don't seem to actually care about how she feels as long as other people can look at her situation and think she's doing well. As her boyfriend, you should have cared more about how she's doing emotionally and not care about how other people think she's doing financially. To her, struggle is a part of life. Growing up with little or no money means you have to rely on yourself. Everything you get is a handout out of pity. If there is anything you don't want, it is pity. Nobody is. Could you please provide the actual Reddit story or update you want me to rewrite? Right now, I don't have the full original text to work with. If you paste the story, I'll be able to rewrite it according to your instructions. Update 1. I'm a woman, but for some reason, a lot of people seem to assume I'm a man. Both my girlfriend and I are women, just to clear that up. When I call it my house, it's because it is. My parents gifted it to me, so I only have to cover property tax, utilities, and upkeep. It's nothing extravagant, a simple 5-bedroom home in a nice neighborhood. Since it's something I can afford on my own, I never saw the point in taking money from her for it. People say it's manipulative to gift my girlfriend things in a way that makes it hard for her to say no. Honestly, I hadn't looked at it like that before. Giving gifts is how I've always shown love, so I get genuinely sad when she refuses them. It's never with an agenda. I remember reading, "You basically just bought your girlfriend," and my first reaction was denial. I would never conceive of our relationship like that. But after pausing, I could see how it might come across that way. I love and respect my girlfriend more than anything. She means everything to me. She's literally the love of my life, perfection. I would never intentionally disrespect her. The idea of starting to charge her or leaving her because someone thinks she's ungrateful seems so transactional. It veers into the territory of, I bought her. If I ever felt she was ungrateful, which I honestly don't, and started charging her, it would only prove that point. When I first gifted her something and saw her face light up, I knew I wanted to marry her. Seeing her happy, surrounded by things she loves, filled my heart more than anything. In retrospect, maybe that was more about how it made me feel than what she wanted. Someone said, wealthy people love giving gifts. It's true, gifting can be a power play for some, but for me? I simply want her to be happy. I genuinely didn't realize that paying off her debt by herself was a personal goal. She never told me, only that she didn't want to bring baggage into our marriage. A few people wondered if we aren't compatible, or that maybe she's just looking for an excuse not to marry me. That thought does hurt, I can't lie. If she decided not to marry me, I'd accept it, because I love her more than anything. I even started thinking maybe she was just too kind-hearted to tell me directly. Would I ever expect her to pay me back if she left, right after I paid off her debt? The answer is unequivocally no. I'd never ask, even if we broke up. Not once, no begging, no accusation. I just don't operate that way. I don't financially abuse her either. She works and she could get by if she had to move to a smaller town. Sure, living in my home is beyond her means right now, but she's not dependent on me. I'm not careless about money. If there's a hole in the wall, I have a friend fix it, rather than hiring a company or buying a whole new house. But I'll confess, I wasn't exactly frugal, either. When my girlfriend moved in, she showed me all the ways I wasted money, leaving the lights on, overbuying food, upgrading my phone unnecessarily, and buying things like cars I didn't need. She helped me break habits I didn't even recognize. And just to set the record straight, even though some people try their luck in my messages, it's not going to happen. I'm madly in love with her. I recognize that I probably love her more than she loves me. I'm okay with that. But I'm not a lovesick fool. If we break up, I'll respect her boundaries and won't go on spoiling her. People tell me to date within my own social class. That's never mattered to me. All my exes came from wealthy backgrounds, but my girlfriend and I met by chance and hit it off. I never go out seeking vulnerable people. If I like someone, I like them, simple as that. I grew up with a nanny who had a completely ordinary financial life, so I've never looked down on anyone with less. I brought her mother into the situation simply because parents have access, not to manipulate things or have her mother convince Amy to accept anything. For the record, I don't know the details of paying off a loan. I went to college for free, thanks to my parents. I do work, though. They'd never let me just stand idle, though I can't deny I was spoiled as the youngest and only daughter. My parents were rarely around, but when they were, they doted on me. Now, on to how everything unfolded. Definitely not what I anticipated. Amy came back the day after this all started so we could sit down and talk. I took the advice to heart and wrote her a letter, explaining my intentions and why I thought she'd appreciate having her debt paid off. When she read my letter, it felt like she just skimmed it. My heart sank. I could practically hear the universe whispering, "Told you so." She laid out some very clear boundaries. She wants me to get therapy, convinced that my need to lavish her with gifts is rooted in my upbringing. My parents aren't bad people, but they worked a lot and expressed love through gifts when they couldn't be there, never missing a birthday or holiday. Amy also insists on absolutely no more gift giving. I asked what that meant for birthdays and holidays, but after all this, she refuses to accept anything. Even then. She told me that spending so much money on her was absurd, and the fact that I just could was even more so. I tried to explain that once we're married, my assets would be hers. She wouldn't just be marrying a wealthy woman, she'd become one herself. When I asked if that made her uncomfortable, she skirted the question and insisted we'd keep separate finances anyway. I probably shouldn't have asked this, but it had been on my mind after seeing so many people talk about her hyper-independence. I asked if she took pleasure in struggling and then overcoming hardship, if paying off her debt herself made it more gratifying somehow. She answered honestly and said she've watched her struggle all her life. It's part of her process. She saw her mom go through endless obstacles to provide for her, and, somehow, they pulled through. She grew up into this strong woman who never ended up on the streets, no matter what life threw at them. But I couldn't help but think she's trapped in this mindset. If she isn't struggling, she feels like she hasn't done enough. I suggested that maybe she should try therapy. I told her, it sounds like you're stuck in this pattern, feeling like you have to struggle or you haven't achieved anything. She flat out refused, telling me she was fine, and insisted I wouldn't understand, maybe because I've never been through what she has. At that point, I realized that whatever I said wasn't going to change her mind. I decided to drop it and just move on. She started making a few more demands, nothing major, really, just more things she wanted. But then she dropped a bomb. She said she didn't even want to think about marriage for a few more years. Now, we've been together 4 years. We've shared a home for 2. I'm 25, she's 27. Sure, we're young, but in my mind, I always pictured getting married by 30, no later. That hit me pretty hard, and out of nowhere, we slipped into a deep, vulnerable conversation. I asked her straight out, did she want to marry me at all? Because it suddenly didn't feel like it. It took her a while, but eventually she told me some private things. I won't go into detail, but the truth came out. She doesn't want to get married. For her, that's where all the problems start. She said she never wanted to be contract bound to anyone. Hearing that hurt. I felt blindsided, honestly. Marriage has always been my dream, and she knew that. I pointed out that I've been clear about that since the beginning. All she said was that paying off her debt had been her dream, and when I handled it for her, I ruined that. She felt I should accept this as her way of making things even between us. I tried explaining it. I told her I didn't know getting out from under her debt was so important to her, but she always knew how much marriage mattered to me. No matter what I said, it was like she was fighting me at every turn. Every word met a wall. When we finished talking, I felt worse, not relieved, not hopeful, just empty. The next day, I took action. I asked my lawyer to draft up a contract, just a simple one. I didn't want anything in return for paying her debt, and I'd never ask her to pay me back. Then I gave it to her, and sat her down. I told her that we needed to end things. Our lives were heading in different directions, we didn't share the same goals anymore. She just blew up. This is the sweetest girl you'll ever meet, so to see her so angry, it took me by surprise. She told me dumping her just because she wouldn't marry me, especially after what happened, was selfish. She insisted she still loved me, that we didn't need a wedding to prove that. I stood firm. I told her, I disagree, and I left. Right now, I'm at my parents' house. I just sat with my mom for a while, not saying a word. I didn't cry, but she could tell something was wrong. She let me sit there in silence, just being with her, and somehow, that made me feel a little better. So here I am. Not at all what I expected would come out of this conversation, not in just 3 days. But this is where I'm at. Update 2. I've been at my parents' house long enough for my mom to start leaving tea outside my door without asking questions. I've just been lying there, thinking about how quiet my house is without her, and then yesterday morning the doorbell rang and it was Amy's mom on the porch, mascara under her eyes like she'd been crying in the car. She asked if we could talk somewhere without my parents hearing, so we sat on the back steps and watched a squirrel nearly fall off the fence, and she told me the thing she should have told both of us a long time ago. She said the last chunk of Amy's student loans wasn't entirely in Amy's name. When Amy was 18, the only way she could go was for her mother to co-sign a private loan, and then when things went bad her mom took a consolidation in her own name to protect Amy's credit because she was terrified of messing up her future. Amy never knew that part. The collectors had started calling again and they'd threatened to take her car and sue, and she panicked. That's why she helped me. It wasn't just sneaking behind Amy's back for the sake of it. She was scared. I felt my stomach drop through the steps because I could see it all at once. No wonder she blew up at me. We turned her own mother into part of a secret. And at the same time, no wonder her mom said yes to me. She kept saying, "I'm so sorry, baby, I didn't know what to do," and I put my head on her shoulder and we both cried for a second like two idiots on a wooden stair. After she left, I drove home to pack up Amy's things. I thought I'd be practical. I brought boxes and tape and told myself I'd make a pile for her to pick up later. The house still smells like her shampoo and the little eucalyptus thing she hung in the shower. Her plants looked angrier at me than she did. I stood in our bedroom too long, then I got down on the floor to pull the dust bunnies from under the bed and my hand hit a shoebox that wasn't mine. Inside, there was a plain linen pouch tied with blue thread, a folded paper that had grease stains on it like she'd been carrying it around, and a little notebook. The paper was a reservation. 2 nights at a cabin off the lake in late spring. The notebook had a list that started after at the top. After debt. Little things like, make her omelet that actually beats mine, and then a page that said in her messy handwriting, ask her to marry me without making her feel bought, and my name was written so many times on that page I had to sit down on the floor. The pouch had 2 thin bands inside, simple and beautiful, and a note tucked underneath, Grandma's gold. Don't laugh if the sizes are wrong. I just stared at the rings until my tears made them blur. I think I said "oh" out loud, like a person who just learned to talk. I called her and she picked up on the second ring like she'd been staring at her phone. She said, "You found it," and I said yes, and I said, "Why would you tell me you don't want to be married?" And she was quiet for a good long time. Then she said she felt like I stole the one thing that was hers to do, the timing and the feeling, and it made all the air go out of the dream. She said she didn't know how to stand next to me without feeling like she was behind. She said saying she didn't want marriage felt safer than saying she wanted it and felt like she didn't deserve it yet. I told her what her mom told me, about the loan and why, and I could hear her breath hitch. She didn't know. She said she needed to go to her mom. I told her I left the contract with her name on it in the drawer where we keep batteries and takeout menus. I told her she could pick up her things without me there if she wanted. She said, please don't leave, and then, not the house, I mean, right now. Just stay. She came over after, in a hoodie I bought that she pretends is mine, eyes red, and she sat at the very edge of the couch like the room was hot. We didn't touch each other. She said her mom cried too. She said she was angry at both of us and not ready to forgive any of it yet, and she was also relieved, and all of that could be true at the same time. She put the rings on the coffee table, right on top of the water ring stains we never sanded out, and she told me she still wants a life with me but not like this. She needs to earn some things for herself before she can accept other things, even if that's silly to me, and she knows that sounds stubborn, but that's her brain. I asked if the cabin was what I thought it was and she nodded and then laughed in that miserable way she does when she's about to cry again and said yes. And she had planned this whole scavenger hunt where I'd find a note in the bookstore and a note in the park where we took pictures with the big dog statue and then the last note would be in my omelet pan when I opened it, which is a very her thing to do, to propose with breakfast. We didn't fix anything, not that night. We just told the truth like we should have months ago. I told her I start with gifts because that's how my parents said I see you and it makes my hands feel useful when I don't have words, and she told me she starts with no because that's how she kept herself safe when there wasn't enough. She said maybe if we figure out how to say I love you in a way the other person can actually hear, we can try again. Not engaged, not living like we were. A pause, not an ending. Her idea was a smaller place for her nearby, not with her mom, not with me, where she can prove to herself she can pay for her life and then choose me, not need me. She asked if, instead of buying her anything ever again, I could give her time. Pick her up after work sometimes. Eat cheap tacos. Sit on her floor. That kind of thing. I told her I'd already put my name down for a therapist and I start next week and her mouth did that thing where it wants to smile but isn't ready to yet. I showed her the contract and she read it carefully twice, lips moving on the words, and then she signed it and slid it back. I don't owe you, she said, and I said, I know, and I actually did. Before she left, she went into the kitchen and made me the dumbest, best omelet I've ever had in my life with a ridiculous pan. She cut it in half and ate standing up, because she always eats standing up when she's anxious, and then she put the rings back in the pouch and handed it to me. Hold on to them, she said. If we get there, I want to be the one to ask you. This morning, I took down the framed mock-up of the future garden she drew for the backyard and rolled it up and put rubber bands around it because I can't look at it right now. I called a realtor for her, not to pay, just to pass along the number of the lady who helped me once because she is kind and will explain leases without making you feel stupid. I moved the car she hates into the garage so I don't see it in the driveway every time I leave. I made a list for the first time in my life that wasn't about buying something. It starts with, let her do her life. Let me do mine. Meet in the middle. I don't know what we are in the eyes of the internet. In my house, right now, we are two people who love each other and are trying to decide what to do with that love in a way that doesn't break us. It's messier than I hoped. It's also more honest than we've ever been. And the stupid part is, even with my heart in pieces, when I opened the fridge just now, it smelled like onions and butter and her shampoo, and I stood there with my head inside like a crazy person and laughed. Update 3. I didn't know a screwdriver could make me cry until I was sitting cross-legged on the floor of a studio with a sink in the same room as the bed, trying to fix a drawer slide that had given up in 2004. The window was painted shut except for a sliver that made the blinds click in the breeze. I had 3 screws in my mouth because I didn't know where else to hold them and she said, please don't strip it, in this voice that was half a laugh and half a prayer, and I said, I won't, even though I absolutely was, and somehow the drawer went in anyway. That was the first thing I fixed in her new place with my hands instead of my card and it felt like someone had handed me a brand new muscle. She found a place 8 minutes away if you hit both green lights and don't get caught behind the bus. The kind of building where the hall smells like laundry that didn't quite get dry and you can hear the neighbor sneeze. The radiator bangs like it has opinions. The ceiling is slanted enough to bump your head if you forget. We carried boxes up the stairs and she told me I could take the light ones and I wanted to argue but she was right. We ate peaches out of a can on the floor with 2 plastic forks she brought in her back pocket and she said, don't you dare order a celebration pizza, and I didn't. We split a granola bar instead. I kept my hands in my pockets a lot, which I guess is my version of a muzzle. My therapist's office has those sand timers on the bookshelf that make you think you're in a gentle game you could lose. He asked me to describe the first time I learned to love without an object and I couldn't think of one. I kept wanting to say, she liked the scarf, or, I got him the bike, and he waited until the silence wasn't fidgeting anymore and then I said, I once sat on a bathroom floor with my friend for 4 hours while she threw up, and he said, good, like I'd found a word I dropped. He gave me a rock the size of a plum to carry in my pocket for a week and told me to touch it every time I felt an impulse to buy. I thought it was silly. I touched it 15 times in Target without putting anything in my cart and came home with nothing but the rock and a sense of victory that felt like a secret. Amy texted me the photo of the lake cabin reservation with the dates circled and said, "It's in my name. I'm going. If you come, we go as us, not as a test." I read it 5 times. I brought nothing but a duffel bag with socks and the stupid rock. On the drive there she tuned the radio to the station where the ads are longer than the songs and sang under her breath anyway. The cabin had a bruise of a stain under the stovepipe and a couch that was really 3 chairs holding each other up. We put our phones on airplane mode and the world kept spinning, which felt rude and also a relief. A storm came in mean and fast before dinner and the lights went out like they were embarrassed. We found matches in a drawer with 20 menus for pizza places that don't deliver to the woods and 2 bent bottle caps. There was a cast iron pan and butter and eggs, because of course there were, like the universe has a sense of humor it thinks is subtle. We cooked on the little gas burner with the rain drilling the roof. At one point the pan popped and flung an onion ring onto the floor and she picked it up and wiped it on her shirt and slid it onto my finger and said, "This is the only ring I can put on you right now," and it felt so stupid and perfect that I started laughing, the kind of laugh that makes you cry without your permission. My finger smelled like onions and grease in her. We talked like people who had been saving up sentences for months. She said she took the rings out twice and then put them back because she wanted me to want them later, not today. I told her I took down the garden drawing because my chest hurt looking at it and she said, "I know, I took a picture of it before you did." We made rules that weren't really rules, more like little soft promises. She said, "If I ask, you can help. If I don't, you can sit with me while I figure it out." I said, "If I panic, I'm going to tell you before I act like an idiot." She said, "I don't think you're an idiot," and I said, "I know," and I meant both versions of that. The next morning the power was back and we made coffee that tasted like campfire and dirt in heaven. We walked to the edge of the lake and skipped stones that mostly plunked and I told her about the rock in my pocket and she put her hand around it and said, "It's warm," like that was important information. We didn't touch much, but when we did it was like a new thing we were both learning, awkward and careful and very alive. A loon yelled somewhere off to the left like a person who stubbed their toe. She said, "I hate that bird," for no reason I could see, and I said, "I know, because now I do." Back in the city she texted me the first thing she wanted help with. Not money. "Can you look at my resume?" The nonprofit down the street posted an admin job. I stood at my kitchen counter and watched the little dots bounce and then disappear and then bounce again and I said out loud to nobody, "Okay," and then I did edits with track changes like a real person and didn't apply for her or call anyone I know. She sent back a version with half my edits and a comment that said, "I can answer phones," because she gets hives when people call her shy. She got an interview. I sat in my car outside the building reading a book I didn't absorb and when she came out her mouth did that almost smile again and she tapped the window, twice, like the start of a song. "I think it went okay," she said. They asked me about spreadsheets. We went for tacos and ate them on the hood because her apartment smells like paint right now. I paid for the tacos because it was $8 and she let me, which is progress and also nothing, depending on the scale you use to measure. Her mom invited me over for soup and apology and then said she was going to a financial literacy class at the library on Tuesday nights and asked if we wanted to come and I felt the part of me that thinks I'm above learning simple things get loud and then quiet. We went. We sat next to the woman who brought a baby who slept with his fist in his ear. A man with a tie the color of toothpaste explained interest rates with 2 jars of jelly beans. Amy took notes like they were going to quiz her and pass me one. "This tastes better than shame," with a drawing of a jelly bean wearing sunglasses, and I had to cough to make my laugh sound like a throat clear. I sold the car she hates. I did that for me. The garage looks like a breath now. My dad called and said, "Do you want me to handle the paperwork?" And I said, "No," and did the DMV line and the copies and the check, and when the buyer drove away I stood there with my hands on my hips like I'd just cut down a tree. I took the money and put it in my own boring grown-up savings and it didn't burn a hole or crawl out of the jar and go buy someone a watch. I told Amy later, I let something go, and she understood without me explaining it into the ground. The night before her second interview the radiator in her new place sounded like someone dropping marbles into a coffee can and she texted me at 1:08 a.m, "It's so loud, I can't sleep," and then, "Can you come sit?" I was outside in socks before I remembered shoes. I sat on the floor and listened to the building groan and I didn't Google a fix and I didn't call a 24-hour plumber like a hero. I put my hoodie over her eyes and counted her breaths with her. When she drifted off, her mouth opened a little and she snored one tiny snore each time and I wanted to cry from how ordinary it was. I walked home at sunrise with my stupid rock feeling like a little planet in my pocket and the city smelling like bread and wet concrete, and I laughed like a person who was starting to like the sound of her own feet on the ground. She didn't get the admin job. She got a different one, 2 blocks farther, with worse lighting and better hours and a woman boss who said, "I don't care if you don't know something, I care if you ask." Amy called me outside on her break and said, "I asked," like a magic trick. We celebrated by doing her first real grocery run in the store where the carts all pull to the left. She put things in the basket and took them back out and then put them back in when they fit her math. I followed and held the basket and didn't suggest a single expensive cheese. At the checkout she used her own card and when the bag broke in the parking lot we picked up oranges rolling in every direction and chased them like kids. There's a tiny patch of dirt outside her building where weeds make a democracy of themselves. She wants to plant something and wait. I said I could bring the good soil in my trunk and she said, no soil. Just me and a bad trowel, and I said okay and then shut up. We pressed our thumbs into the earth and she whispered, grow, please, because she talks to seeds and lost earrings and sometimes to the sink when it gurgles. We put a cutting of her pothos from my kitchen into a jar on her windowsill and it already has one silly root that looks like a tooth. On the way out last night she stopped me at her door and put the linen pouch in my hand and closed my fingers over it and then opened them again and took it back. Not yet, she said, and her eyes did that wet glass thing. And then she tucked the pouch into the top drawer of her little dresser where the fixed drawer slides now, and she kissed my cheek like a promise and not a question. I walked down the stairs with my hand on the railing I tightened with my own arms and it felt like the right kind of ache. When I got home, my house smelled like butter and eucalyptus again and also like fresh dirt from my shoes, and I stood in the doorway and didn't turn on any lights and listened to my fridge hum and it sounded like patience.